The late autumn sun cast long skeletal shadows across the manicured lawns of Gatcombe Park. Inside the grand estate, a hush had fallen, thick and heavy as the velvet drapes. Camilla, queen consort, stood by the tall window in the morning room, her gaze fixed on the distant figures of horses in a paddock, but her mind was a tempest of shock and disbelief. The tea in the delicate porcelain cup before her had long gone cold, untouched, since the moment her sister-in-law, Princess Anne, had spoken the words that now echoed relentlessly in her ears. Anne, ever the epitome of directness and lack of sentimentality, had delivered the news with the same matter-of-fact tone she might use to discuss crop rotation or the bloodlines of a new foal. "I'm drawing up the papers now, Camilla. The authority for Gatcombe, the whole estate, all will pass directly to Catherine. It's time." The words had landed like physical blows. Gatcombe Park. It wasn't just a house or a patch of land in Gloucestershire. It was Anne's sanctuary, her fiercely guarded kingdom. For over 4 decades, since the Queen had gifted it to her and Captain Mark Phillips following their wedding in 1973, it had been the one place where the Princess Royal could be unequivocally herself. It was the heart of her world, as a competitive equestrian, the private haven where she raised her children, Peter and Zara, away from the relentless glare of the palace windows. It was a place of mud-spattered Land Rovers, of early morning rides through misty fields, of the quiet, earthy smells of stables and hay. It was Anne's soul laid out across 730 acres of prime English countryside. To hand over its authority, its operational and strategic control, was not merely a transfer of property. It was the surrender of her very identity. Camilla had always understood this. She had visited countless times, witnessing Anne in her element, a woman utterly at home, commanding respect, not with a title, but with a lifetime of knowledge and an unshakable, no-nonsense authority. To see that authority, that tangible power, being gifted to Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, was a seismic shock. It rearranged the unspoken hierarchy of the family in a way Camilla had never anticipated. She had watched Catherine grow into her royal role with remarkable grace, from a young woman nervously navigating the media frenzy to a confident duchess, a devoted mother, and a pillar of support for her husband, William. But this was different. And this was stepping directly into Anne's world, a realm where charm and royal protocol mattered far less than the ability to muck out a stable at dawn and discuss the finer points of evening dressage. A soft rustle of silk announced Anne's presence before she spoke. She moved to the window and stood beside Camilla, her posture as rigid and strong as an oak. "You think I'm making a mistake," Anne stated. It wasn't a question. Camilla turned from the window, her expression carefully neutral, a lifetime of royal training masking the turmoil within. "I think it's unexpected, Anne. Gatcombe is you. It always has been." Anne gave a short, almost imperceptible nod, her sharp blue eyes scanning the horizon. "Precisely. And that's the problem. Nothing stays the same forever, not even me. I'm not getting any younger. And the estate needs more than a custodial figurehead. It needs a future. It needs someone who can carry it forward for the next generation." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "Catherine understands. She's not just a royal in a fancy hat. She's got a head for logistics, a genuine love for the countryside. And more importantly, she has the next King of England for a husband. This isn't just about land, Camilla. It's about anchoring William and their children to something real, something solid outside of London and the palace bubble. They need a roots system, and this place can be it." The logic was undeniable. but logic did little to soothe the sting of being so completely out of the loop. For years, Camilla had worked tirelessly to find her own place within the family, and to move from the shadow of Diana and the controversies of the past to become a respected and trusted senior royal. She had forged a careful, if sometimes distant, camaraderie with Anne, built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of duty. This felt like a bypass, a tacit statement that the future of the family, the real future, now revolved around William and Catherine in a way that even she, the queen consort, was not a part of. Later that day, seeking a distraction, Camilla wandered towards the stables. The familiar smell of horses and leather was a comfort, a link to her own beloved animals. As she approached, she heard voices, one deep and calm, the other lighter, but filled with a confident assurance she recognized. William and Catherine were standing by a stall, looking at a magnificent bay mare. Catherine was in tailored jeans and a simple jumper, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. There was no sign of the polished duchess. In her place was an animated woman, gesturing as she spoke. "The drainage in the lower paddocks is the key. Anne was showing me the maps. If we rotate the grazing differently, we can prevent the poaching near the gates in winter. It's a simple fix, but it requires a long-term view of the pasture management." William listened, a look of quiet pride and amusement on his face. "Listen to you?" he teased gently. "Pasture management. A year ago, you were planning state dinners." Catherine laughed, a genuine open sound. "A state dinner is easy compared to this. You can't negotiate with a 1,000-acre estate. You have to listen to it." She looked up and saw Camilla, and her smile widening without a trace of artifice. "Camilla, come and see. Anne has the most magnificent plans. She's been showing me everything. The rotation schedules, the breeding plans, even the accounts for the farm shop." As Catherine spoke, gesturing towards a worn, leather-bound ledger that Anne had clearly entrusted to her, Camilla saw it. It wasn't just the knowledge Catherine was absorbing, it was the responsibility. Anne wasn't just handing over a piece of paper. She was investing years of wisdom into a chosen successor. And Catherine was receiving it not as a burden, but as a gift. The following weeks saw a flurry of private activity at Gatcombe. From the outside, the world saw the usual royal engagements. Anne opening a hospital, Catherine visiting a children's hospice. But behind the scenes, a quiet revolution was taking place. And Anne became a mentor, her lessons in the kitchen over simple meals or on long, bracing walks across the estate. She taught Catherine about the tenant farmers, their families, and the unspoken covenants of trust that held the rural community together. She showed her the ancient hedgerows, the protected woodlands, and the delicate balance of nature that required constant, vigilant care. Camilla watched these developments with a complex mix of emotions. There was the initial sting of exclusion, a feeling of being on the outside of a vital new alliance. There was also a grudging admiration for Anne's strategic brilliance. By binding Catherine so tightly to Gatcombe, she was ensuring not only the estate's future, but also cementing the bond between her own branch of the family and the future king and queen. And it was a masterstroke of dynastic planning, disguised as a simple act of maternal passing on. One afternoon, a few weeks before the official documents were to be signed, Camilla returned to Gatcombe for a small private family lunch. The atmosphere was different. There was a lightness, a sense of purpose. Catherine was animated, discussing plans for a new educational trail through the woods for local school children. Anne listened, offering a suggestion here, a word of caution there, but her eyes held a deep satisfaction Camilla had rarely seen in them. She looked, Camilla realized, at peace. After lunch, Anne found Camilla in the library, examining a photograph of the Queen on a horse. Anne came and stood beside her. "You're still wondering why?" Anne said, her voice low. Camilla didn't deny it. "Oh, it's a tremendous amount of responsibility, for both of them." "It is," Anne agreed. "But look at them. Look at him." She gestured through the window where William was kicking a football with some of the local stable lads, George and Charlotte shrieking with laughter as they tried to tackle him. Catherine stood nearby, talking with Zara, their heads close together, a map of the estate spread out on the bonnet of a car. "William has spent his entire life preparing for a role he never asked for. He carries the weight of it, always. Here, he can just be. He's a husband, a father, a man who knows which end of a horse eats. Catherine gives him that. And now, this place will give their children that. They'll have a home that isn't a museum. They'll have mud on their boots and memories that have nothing to do with crowns and carriages." Camilla finally understood. This wasn't about snubbing her or about elevating Catherine above others. It was about a grandmother's profound and practical love for her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. It was about legacy, but not the legacy of palaces and palaces. It was the legacy of roots, of place, of a connection to the land that had sustained the monarchy for centuries. It was about ensuring that the future King of England had a place to call home, a sanctuary where he was just Papa, and his children could learn the value of a hard day's work long before they learned the weight of a scepter. The day of the private family ceremony to mark the transfer was characteristically low-key. There were no cameras, no press releases. Just the family gathered in the old drawing room at Gatcombe. Anne signed the documents with a steady hand, her expression impassive. Then she handed the pen to Catherine. As Catherine signed her name, a new chapter was written, not just for the estate, but for the monarchy itself. Afterwards, there was champagne, simple and celebratory. Camilla watched as Catherine moved to Anne, taking her hands. "I will take care of it," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise. I will learn, and I will listen, and I will love it as you do." For the first time that day, Anne's stern facade cracked. A genuine warm smile touched her lips, and she squeezed Catherine's hands. "I know you will," she said simply. "It's yours now. Look after it." As the evening drew in and the family dispersed, Camilla found a quiet moment alone on the terrace. The lights of the house glowed warm behind her, and the vast, dark expanse of the park stretched out before her. The shock had subsided, replaced by a quiet, profound understanding. The landscape of the royal family was shifting, not with the drama of a coup, but with the quiet, purposeful steps of those who understood the long game. The authority for Gatcombe had passed from one remarkable woman to another. It was not an ending, but a beginning.